Imagine this. 5 sheriff's SUVs screeching into my vineyard at dawn, lights flashing, radios crackling, all because my HOA president, Laura Hensley, decided I was some kind of master criminal. For what? Growing grapes. Yeah, you heard that right. My peaceful little vineyard in Willow Creek, Oregon, got raided by law enforcement because Laura thought my farming was a front for something shady. This is the same woman who'd flash her perfect smile and wave at me every morning, only to turn around and accuse me of fraud in front of the entire neighborhood. But Laura made one colossal mistake in her amateur detective work. She never bothered to check who actually owns the land she's been strutting around on while pointing fingers. Trust me, this story spirals into pure chaos, and you won't believe how it unfolds. Grab a coffee, settle in, and let me take you back to where it all began 6 months ago, in the summer of 2024. I'm Ethan Caldwell, 54, a burned-out corporate attorney from Chicago who traded skyscrapers for grapevines. After 2 decades navigating the cutthroat world of mergers and acquisitions, I was done with the suits, the stress, the endless chase for another million. I bought a vineyard in Willow Creek, a sleepy valley with rolling hills, crisp air, and neighbors who, I thought, valued their privacy as much as I did. It was my slice of heaven, or so I believed, until Laura Hensley knocked on my door. Week 1, Laura showed up with a tray of lemon bars, her smile so polished it could have been trademarked. "Hi, neighbor. I'm Laura, from that cute colonial with the blue shutters up the road." Everything about her screamed money designer sundress, flawless makeup, nails that had never touched dirt. She was trying so hard to be charming that my lawyer instincts kicked in immediately. After years of dealing with corporate sharks, you learn to spot when someone's fishing for something. Still, I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she was just being friendly, right? Wrong. By week 2, Laura's true colors started peeking through, subtle as a sledgehammer. "What a charming little vineyard," she cooed, eyes scanning my property like she was appraising it for auction. "Must be tough keeping it afloat with all these rising costs." Then came the kicker. "You must be doing really well to afford a place like this." Red flag number 1. Who asks about your finances while sipping iced tea on your porch? I decided to test her. See, after dodging gold diggers in Chicago, I'd learned to guard my personal details like state secrets. So I played along, sighing. Honestly, it's been a struggle lately. This place costs more than I planned for after retiring. Her eyes lit up like a slot machine hitting the jackpot. "Oh, Ethan, I know someone who could help," she said, practically purring. "A friend who invests in farms like yours. Maybe we could talk options sometime." Week 2, and she's already angling to buy my land. Bold move for someone who barely knew my name. By week 3, Laura was in full predator mode, showing up daily with her concerned neighbor act. "My friend's so eager to help farmers like you transition to more affordable homes," she'd say, like she was doing me a favor by suggesting I abandon my life's work. Her tactics were straight out of a con artist's playbook. Fake urgency about market timing, sob stories about hating to see good people struggle, always pushing for a quick decision. Pro tip: when someone's rushing you to sell your property, run the other way. My vineyard manager, Tommy, a grizzled local who'd seen it all, kept me in the loop about Laura's antics. "Boss, she's been snooping at the county office like she's writing a book on you," he'd say, shaking his head. "She's spending more time digging into your life than most folks spend planning their kids' weddings." Here's the thing about Willow Creek. Property records are a labyrinth. My great-grandfather bought most of this land during the 1930s timber boom, and it's been passed down through family trusts ever since. The paperwork is a tangle of legal entities and century-old deeds that would stump even a seasoned real estate lawyer. Laura, though, thought she'd crack the code with a few Google searches and a quick trip to the county clerk. She saw a vineyard owner and modest lifestyle and pegged me as an easy mark. What she didn't know was that those complicated trust records she couldn't quite unravel. They didn't just cover my vineyard, they covered most of Willow Creek, including the land under her precious HOA clubhouse and even her own house. If she'd done her homework, she might have realized she was trying to scam her own landlord. While Laura played detective, I did some digging of my own. Public records are a goldmine when you know how to read them. Turns out, Laura's husband, Mark, owned Crestwood Builders, a local construction company teetering on the edge of bankruptcy, after a string of bad deals. They were drowning in debt, desperate for a big score to stay afloat. Suddenly, Laura's obsession with my struggling vineyard made sense. She wasn't trying to help me. She was trying to save herself. By month 2, Laura's friendly mask was slipping faster than a bad wig in a storm. Her daily visits turned into demands. "Ethan, my buyer's getting impatient," she'd snap, as if I owed her an answer. When I pressed for details about this mysterious buyer, she'd dodge like a politician at a press conference. "My expertise in real estate tells me this is a fair deal," she'd say. Expertise? That's when I hit her with, "Laura, what kind of real estate expertise are we talking about exactly?" Her face froze, and she stammered something about market knowledge before scurrying off. Caught red-handed, she didn't back down, she doubled down. Tommy loved it. "Boss, she hired some guy to tail you yesterday," he'd chuckle. "Cost her a couple $100 to confirm you buy coffee at the local diner and have a bank account." Laura's breaking point came when she let slip details about my finances I'd never shared. "Laura, how exactly do you know so much about my money?" I asked, calm as could be. Her panic was instant, like she'd been caught stealing. She'd been digging through records, probably using old real estate contacts, building a profile on the poor farmer she thought she could manipulate. That's when I asked the question that haunted her for months. "What exactly did you find when you researched my property, Laura?" Her mask didn't just slip, it shattered. 3 days later, Laura called an emergency HOA meeting, not your standard monthly gripe session, but a full-blown drama fest with an agenda titled Agricultural Threat to Community Values and Safety. I'm reading this, thinking threat? Lady, I grow organic grapes, not explosives. The meeting was at the HOA clubhouse, that shiny monument to suburban egos. Laura had prepared a PowerPoint, complete with sneaky photos of my vineyard, trying to make routine farming look like a crime scene. She'd even written up claims about unsanitary conditions and noise violations, as if I was running a junkyard instead of a vineyard. I wasn't invited, but when someone's dragging your name through the mud, you crash the party. I walked into that clubhouse just as Laura was spinning her tale about helping poor Ethan find suitable housing. The room went silent, like I'd walked into a funeral. "Discussing my property seems like my business, Laura," I said, locking eyes with her. She tried to regain control, announcing, "This is private HOA business, Ethan." But I wasn't having it. "Suitable housing? Like your husband's company finding suitable financing to avoid bankruptcy?" The room gasped. You could feel the air shift as neighbors realized this wasn't about might, was about Laura's agenda. Her desperation kicked into overdrive after that. She sent fake EPA notice printed in Comic Sans, no less, claiming I was violating environmental laws. She tried bribing a county inspector with $500 to write me up for imaginary violations. When that flopped, she launched a social media smear campaign, ranting about dangerous chemicals in our residential neighborhood. I'm thinking, lady, the strongest chemical I use is vinegar for cleaning. So, I fought back with a video of my own. Picture me, standing by my irrigation system, looking into the camera. My neighbor claims I'm using toxic chemicals. Let's see what's really in here. I took a swig from the tap. Tastes like water. Shocking. The video went viral locally, with folks who knew me piling on comments about what a solid neighbor I'd been. Laura's few supporters started questioning her, wondering why a suburbanite was suddenly an expert on agricultural violations. Then came the county inspection circus. Laura somehow got building, health, and environmental inspectors to swarm my vineyard, pointing at water tanks like they were weapons of mass destruction. "Those look dangerous," she'd insist. The inspector, fed up, finally snapped. "Ma'am, those are irrigation tanks. They're required by law." Every inspection came back spotless, not just compliant, but exemplary. The environmental guy was so impressed he asked to bring his students for a tour. Laura's plan was backfiring spectacularly, and Tommy was eating it up. "Boss, she's trying to put out a fire with gasoline," he'd laugh. Laura wasn't done, though. She sent a cease and desist letter from some sketchy lawyer, claiming I owed HOA fees and threatening liens. I went live online, reading the letter aloud, pointing out fake legal citations. "This references Oregon Code Section 5000. Spoiler, it doesn't exist." Lawyers in the comments tore it apart, and Laura's credibility took another hit. But her biggest blunder came when she overheard me talking to Tommy about calling the bank about quarterly reports. Tommy, playing along, asked, "Which bank, boss?" I replied, "The one with Laura's loan." We knew she was eavesdropping, and her face went white as a sheet. She spent the next 3 days in a frenzy, convinced I was part of some grand conspiracy. The final straw was Laura and Mark calling the sheriff, accusing me of property fraud and tax evasion. 5 SUVs rolled up at 8 a.m., lights blazing, with Laura and Mark pointing at me like I was a drug lord. "That's him. He's been lying about everything," Laura crowed. The lead deputy, looking skeptical, cuffed me for procedure's sake while Tommy filmed everything. 3 minutes in, dispatch radioed back. "Property at 2143 Creek Road is tied to the Caldwell Family Trust, established 1933, controlled by Ethan Caldwell." Laura perked up. "See? He's hiding assets." But the dispatcher wasn't done. Trust owns 78% of developable land in Willow Creek, plus mineral and water rights. That's when my old law partner, James, rolled up, briefcase in hand, looking like he'd just stepped out of a courtroom drama. "Ethan, you didn't mention legal troubles," he said, feigning surprise. I grinned. "I'm not in trouble, James. Laura and Mark seem to think I am." James turned to them, all professional menace. "I'm Ethan's former partner from Chicago. We handled corporate acquisitions and property law." Laura's jaw dropped. James pulled out trust documents, casually noting, "Ethan's family owns most of this valley, including the land under your HOA clubhouse in your house, Mrs. Hensley." The crowd neighbors who'd gathered for the spectacle gasped. Laura stammered, "That's impossible. You're just a farmer." I looked at her, calm as ever. "I am a farmer, Laura. Also the beneficiary of my great-grandfather's timber empire." Mark fainted, hitting the grass like a felled tree. Tommy grabbed a hose while James produced smelling salts, muttering, "Happens more often than you'd think when people realize they've scammed their own creditor." As the deputies uncuffed me, I dropped the real bomb. "Laura, Mark, let's talk about your buyer. That would be Crestwood Builders, right? The company that owes $3.2 million to Willow Creek Bank. Which, by the way, I own." The crowd erupted. Mark, barely conscious, mumbled apologies, while Laura screamed, "You tricked us." Mrs. Larson, a neighbor, shut her down. "Laura, you assumed Ethan was broke and tried to exploit him. Nobody tricked you." The truth kept coming. "The HOA clubhouse. On my land. The shopping plaza. Mine. The community park. Leased to the county for $1 a year." Every revelation hit like a thunderbolt, exposing how much the community relied on my family's generosity. Laura's meltdown was front-page news, with a local reporter scribbling furiously, "HOA president tries to scam Valley's biggest landowner." 6 months later, Laura was serving 18 months for fraud and forgery. Mark had skipped town, working construction in Idaho. But the real win was Willow Creek's transformation. My $6 million investment, new roads, a community center, fiber internet, a fire station turned the valley into a gem. The neighbors even started an annual Ethan Day festival, celebrating honesty and community spirit. Here's the kicker. My great-grandfather's trust required me to live here for 5 years to prove I'd protect the valley's agricultural heritage. Laura's harassment, ironically, became my best character reference, proving my commitment just as the trust board reviewed my case. I could have left after the requirement ended in July 2024, but I stayed. This community, with its grit and heart, was worth fighting for. So what do you think? Was Laura just a desperate woman pushed to the edge, or a calculated con artist who got what she deserved? Should I have pressed harder for justice, or was letting them live as my tenants' punishment enough? And what would you do if you found out your neighbor was secretly pulling the strings of your entire town? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories where truth wins out. Where are you reading this from? Let's see how far this crazy tale travels.